So the term sexual violence or sexual assault is a sexual act that is carried out against a person's will through the use of physical force, intimidation, or coercion. So this includes attempts to rape, to have unwanted sexual advances, sexual harassment, sexual slavery, forced impregnation, sexual abuse of children, forced marriages. So sexual assault is a criminal offense, number one, and under any state or territory criminal laws. So the prevalence of sexual violence varies depending on factors such as alcohol, financial support, and childhood exposure to sexual violence. Guys, if you don't understand, welcome back to Joel Smart Kihi Men's Corner. This is a podcast series that I've created for 30 days, and it's gonna talk about why sexual assault victims never get justice. So we are going to tackle and we're going to explore why societal, legal, and even institutional challenges, and hear even survival stories and discuss actionable solutions on barriers that preventing sexual assault victims from receiving that justice. So welcome again, and today I am going to start this incredible important series. So just to repeat why most sexual assault victims never get justice. Now for that next 30 days we'll be unpacking the systemic, cultural, and personal hurdles that make justice so elusive, and explore how we can be part of that solution. So just as we've discussed sexual violence, we are just going to look at the overview. We already understand the scope. So understanding the scope is we're just going to define, of course we've defined what it is and also the study. So the prevalence of sexual violence varies depending on factors that we've also talked about: alcohol consumption, support, financial support, and even childhood exposure. So a study found that the lifetime prevalence of sexual violence was 37.9%, and for the past year prevalence was 25.2%, which of course that is very abnormal. So every episodic drinkers of alcohol and those who received insufficient financial support reported higher prevalence rates. You see, people resort to sex for financial gains. That again will expose you. So prevalence and correlates of sexual violence among adolescents, right? Sexual assault happens when someone either touches another person in a sexual manner without consent, or makes another person touch them in a sexual manner without consent. So here it's about consenting, agreeing to the behaviors, the weird behaviors. So it includes unwanted kissing and even the touching of someone's genitals, breasts, or bottom, smacking someone. So rape, which happens when someone didn't want to have sex or didn't give their consent for sex to happen. So you see, this episode, we're just going to unpack all this together. So this is just an introduction and a scope. So let's just get into it. So we are going to use an example of Sarah. So Sarah is going to be our example. We are going to use Sarah into our series. So as our survival story, a story of Sarah to do that. So okay, just to get that was an overview, and now into our first episode. Thank you very much. And today, now we are beginning a profoundly important series. Now we are going to explore why so many sexual assault victims never get justice. And in this first episode, we'll examine the barriers survivors face and the systemic issues that perpetuate their suffering. Now, before we dive in, let me share a story that underscores the heart of this issue. A story that is as painful as it is powerful. So Sarah, as I've just said, Meet Sarah. At just 22 years old, she was beginning what she thought was a promising career. Her supervisor, a person she trusted and admired, assaulted her. For months, Sarah carried the weight of this violation in silence, doubting her worth, questioning her actions, and even battling the overwhelming shame society unfairly imposes on survivors, right? When she finally found the courage to report her assault, her journey for justice was met with disbelief and indifference. Colleagues whispered behind her back, friends suggested she move on. Law enforcement dismissed her case due to insufficient evidence. Despite the overwhelming trauma she endured, Sarah felt like she was the one on trial. See, so her story is not unique, right? It's emblematic of the barriers countless survivors face. Sarah's experience highlights how silence is often not a choice but a mechanism of survival in a world that too often fails victims of sexual violence. So why do survivors stay silent? We've just learned from Sarah's story. So survivors like Sarah hesitate to speak out. The reasons are complex and deeply rooted in societal norms. One is the fear of judgment, right? So survivors face questions that blame rather than support. What were you? Questions like, what were you wearing? Why didn't you fight back? Already you have been cornered. So the power dynamics also play around. When the perpetrator is in a position of power, survivors fear retaliation or losing their livelihood. Trauma response. The psychological impact of assault can paralyze survivors, making it difficult to process or report the event. So distrust in the system, lower conviction rates, and traumatizing legal process make many feel that justice is out of reach. Yes, the other side. Cool. So okay, let me see if you're still on. Yeah, thank you. You're still on. So the systematic barriers to justice.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay,
let me meet you in the next. We'll proceed with it. Guys, before you subscribe to this channel, I don't know what you're waiting. Guys, please support me. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Click that subscribe button and like, comment. You can even share this podcast. So we are getting back to systemic barriers to justice, right? So Sarah's case was closed without so much as a hearing. This isn't rare. In fact, it's the norm. Yeah. So systemic failures such as lack of evidence collection, biases within the law enforcement, and societal stigmas often work against survivors. So for many, the journey for justice becomes more traumatic than the assault itself. Sarah shared that reliving her experience during the investigation felt like being assaulted all over again, which means you have to repeat your case over 20 or 30 times for different individuals, different doctors, police, law enforcement agencies, police, lawyers, and all that. All those people involved. This re-traumatization discourages others from even attempting to seek help, right? So breaking the silence is very important. Sarah eventually found support through therapy and a community of survivors. While she didn't receive justice in the traditional sense, she reclaimed her voice, and with it, her power. Right? What can we learn from Sarah's story? That breaking the silence begins with us, right? And here is how we can also create that change. Number one, believe survivors. Any positive doctors, law enforcement, any agency that is concerned with rape cases, sexual assault victims, you must believe survivors, what they say. So when someone shares their story, your belief can be the first step towards their healing, right? So let's educate ourselves to understanding the dynamics of sexual assault and challenge the myths that perpetuate stigma, right? That is very key. And educate yourselves and support systemic change. Advocate for policies that protect survivors and hold perpetrators accountable. So guys, thank you for joining me for this critical conversation. So Sarah's story and Sarah's courage to share her story reminds us of this resilience of survivors and the urgent need for systemic reform. In our next episode, we'll delve into the role of law enforcement in sexual assault cases. How does the system fail survivors, and what can we do to fix it? Remember, silence is not consent, and seeking justice is never easy, but it is very necessary. It's very necessary. So share this episode to anyone or someone who needs to hear it, and let's work together to build a world where survivors are supported, not silenced. Thank you, and let's meet in our next episode. Adios.